topics and I am Anandamai. The changes nature of society. Societies in the process of evolution always strive to discard or reform their characteristics, wholly or in parts. This proves that nothing remains universal and acceptable for all times to come. There is a dynamic process at work that keeps us responding to the changing needs, time, and space. Thus, clinging on to the past and its false glorification may actually hinder onward process of not only individual but society per se. In these connections, Ambedkar pointed out quite logically the futility of flowing the deadwood of the past. In Annihilation of Caste, he made a category statements. The Hindus need to discard a great deal of their heritage before they can suitable government themselves. The Hindus must consider whether they should conserve the whole of their social heritage or select what is helpful and transmit to future generation only that much and no more. John Davy, who was my teacher and to whom I owe so much, has said every society gets encumbered with what is trivial, with dead wood from the past, and with what is positively perverse. As a society becomes more enlightened, it realizes that it is responsible not to conserve and transmit the whole of its existing achievements, but only such as make for a better future society. Arun P. Mukherjee explained the wonderful relationship that Ambedkar had developed with John Dewey. Dewey's quotation in the above passage is from his Democracy and Education. This work had a lasting impact on Ambedkar and he quoted from it repeatedly also, not always with quotation marks. Dewey here is speaking about the education of the young and the type of education needed to build a democratic society. The issue that Ambedkar and Dewey raise in this passage have still not been settled. Will our society to be governed by creationalist or evolutionist principles? Shall we teach our young to question everything in the light of accumulated knowledge and show what Dewey called cooperative intelligence or children? For instance, that Vedic science and Vedic mathematics are the epitome of eternal truth. However, for Devi as well as for Ambedkar, these are not questions to be discussed in the abstract as language games of philosopher. For Devi, it is about schooling and what shall be taught to the children. Ambedkar applies Devi to a concrete situation to ask whether the high caste Hindu society can discriminate against some of its members and treat them as untouchable simply because the scriptures sanction such practice. In 1937, Ambedkar bought a copy of the Manusmriti at a rally in Maharashtra, where over 5,000 people had gathered under this leadership to protest against the denial by high caste Hindus of their basic right to take water from Lake Chowdar. Ambedkar, I would suggest, drags Devi to the edge. Devi only played with the message when he reflected in subjectives about the pernicious effect of idealizing the past. Ambedkar actually set the deadwood affair. Further, Ambedkar suggests that Hindus that there is nothing fixed, eternal, Sanatan. Everything is changing. That changing is the law of life for individual as well as for society. In a changing society, there must be a constant evolution of old values and Hindus must realize that if they are violence in a normally perverted joke team. Fortune can justify the means, he asked. Devi pointed out that violence is only another name for the use of force, and although force must be used for creative purpose, a distinction between the use of force as energy and the use of force as violation needs to be made. The use of force must be so regulated that it should save as many inches as possible is destroying an evil. The similarly in view between Ambedkar and Devi is quite remarkable. To understand just a special relationship between them, it is necessary to unravel the intimacy, the respect for each other's views, which is certainly a testimony to an explanation of their worldviews. It could be rightly claimed that Ambedkar's writing marked his affiliation with Devi through extensive quotation from Devi's work. So deeply embedded is Devi's thought in Ambedkar's consciousness that quite often his words flow through Ambedkar's discourse without quotation marks. Ambedkar not only borrowed concepts and ideas from Devi, his methodological approach and weight of argumentation also show David's influence. The two thinkers share a predilection for examining the past to reflect upon its stresses on the concern and problems of the present and to determine how beneficial or detrimental these residues of the past are the present moment. Both believe that change is fundamental to life and that the thought of any age is often circumstanced by the condition of life operate at the time. Both before are suspicious of traditional worship and eternal truth. Thus, they both challenge the dominant teleological ideas of providence or manifest destiny, as well as the determinist stance of Marxism. The human being to them is unique, incommensurate, and continuously unfolding, making animal making its world through education and communication. Their human is not the atomistic, isolated individual of enlightenment thought, but the individual always ready, embedded in the social. Scientific approach and rationalist plays an important role in changing perception and also helps in understanding a need for a dynamic process of change, which condition an individual life and society at large, and that is why a rational and scientific approach involves a transformative process through which new and better ideas of conduct in private and public life emerge. Scientific approach was an important characteristic in David's philosophy. In the quest of certainty, he makes his position more clear. A disciplined mind takes delight in the problematic and cherishes it until a way out is found and approves itself upon examination. The questionable becomes an active questioning, a search, a desire for emotion of certitude gives place to quest for the object by which the obscure and unsettled by developed into the stable and clear. The scientific attitude may also be defined as that which is capable of enjoying the doubtful. Scientific method is, in one aspect, attractive for making a productive use of doubt by converting it into operations of definite inquiry. No one gets far intellectually who does not love to think, and no one loves to think who does not have an interest in problems as such. To understand how this gets transformed into a definite process of democratization in which education plays an important role, one must read what Devi had to say on this issue of vital importance. Democracy is much broader than a special form, a government of making laws, carrying on governmental administration by means of popular suffrage and elected officers. But it is something broader and deeper than that. The keynote of democracy as a way of life may be expressed, it seems to me, as the necessity for the participation of every mature human being in form of the value that regulate the living of men together, which is necessary from the standpoint of what the general social welfare and the full development of human being as individual. Ambedkar's draw on David when he talks about his ideal society. If you ask me, my ideal would be a society based on liberty, equality, and fraternity. And why not? What objection can there to be fraternity? I cannot imagine any. An ideal society should be mobile, should be full of channels for conveying a change taking place in one part to other parts. In an ideal society, there should be many interests consciously communicated and shared. There should be varied and free points of contact with other modes of association. In other words, there must be social osmosis. This is fraternity, which is only another name for democracy. Democracy is not merely a form of government. It is primarily a mode of associate living, conjoint communicated experience. It is essentially an attitude of respect and reverence towards fellow man. Arun P. Mukherjee further explains the use of words endosmosis by Ambedkar. Ambedkar used it frequently in his writing as a metaphor for communication in a democratic society. The term was used originally by Henry Burgess and after him by William James to describe the interaction of the mind with nature. Devi appropriated it as a descriptor for interaction between social groups. In science, endomosis, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, is the passage of a fluid inward through a pores septum to mix with another fluid on the inside of it. I just that it is a very vivid metaphor for Ambedkarist and Deviant thinking on democracy. It conveys fluidity channels through which groups and individuals in a democracy are linked and are, so to say, irrigated or suffocated with the nutrient of each other's creative intelligence. The broad substance is a separator, a membrane that provides for the privacy of the individuals but does not enclose them within impermeable walls. Thus, the metaphor allows Devi and Ambedkar to hold simultaneous the two apparently contradictory ideas of separateness and conjointness. A democratic social order is one in which there are channels for the distribution of chance carrying occurring anywhere as well as varied and free points of contact. Devi retracts his point in the summary of the chapter. The 2 points selected by which to measure the worth of a form of social life are the extent in which the interests of group are shared by all its members and the fullness and freedom with which it interacts with other groups. A society which makes provision for participation in its good for all its members on equal terms and which secures flexible readjustment of its institution through interaction of the different form of associated life is in so far democratic